All right, Larry Krueger here from the Pig and a Pickle Krug Show with a little 49er video as the Niners brought in some very interesting players to work out during the bye week. We'll tell you who they are and what it all potentially means coming up next. But first, we're brought to you by Pig and a Pickle. The best barbecue in all of Northern California is Pig and a Pickle. Check them out. They're in Emeryville. They're in Corte Madera, and they're soon to open in Petaluma. And join us for the Krug Show meet and greet December 7th, this Sunday at Corte Madera. Pig and a Pickle will be there all day watching football, eating barbecue, drinking some beer, and hanging out. We got some prizes to give away, including a Ricky Pearsall mini autographed helmet to one lucky Niner fan. So join us Sunday at Pig and a Pickle in Corte Madera for the Krug Show meet and greet. All right, let's get into one of the stories of the day. Niners during the bye week. The stories are a little bit more scarce, but we have one here, and we're going to share the screen because our friend Coach Yak put this out on X yesterday. The 49ers had the following players in for tryouts today. And this, as I said, was yesterday. Quarterback Taylor Elgersma, wide receivers Javon Baker, Cole Burgess, Kobe Hudson, and tight end Tanner McLachlan. Let's go through these names. I think a lot of these names are really interesting names across the board. Why don't we start with the bottom and work our way up? Tanner McLachlan played at Arizona, and he's a 6'5", 245-pound tight end. He's had some injuries in his career, but what he has is sticky hands. I mean, this guy would be kind of a challenger for a Jake Tonjes. And there's no question that McLachlan's got good hands. He's a good route runner. I don't think he's probably as fast as Tonjes, but if you're looking for another receiving tight end, and why wouldn't you be? I mean, you lose George Kittle, suddenly you've got Tonjes, and that's it. Braden Willis, I don't think has really progressed. To me, this guy is an upgrade on Braden Willis for sure. And in potentially long-term, he could be even an upgrade on Tonjes. But Tanner McLachlan was a good player at Arizona. A lot of big catches. I mean, this guy was a 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6 go-to guy for the Wildcats, and he was a hell of a player. He transferred in there. He's a more of a receiver than a blocker, but I think he can hold his own as a blocker, but he's much more of a receiver. So that's the first guy, Tanner McLachlan. The second name on the list is an interesting name as well. That's Kobe Hudson. Kobe Hudson went to Central Florida. He's a great athlete. He's from Pine Mountain, Georgia, 6'1", 195. Didn't run a great 40, 4.57, kind of a middling 40, 1.54, 10-yard split. Who's got the 1.54, 10-yard split? Oh, that's right, Brock Purdy. So he's got the same quickness and 10 yards time as Brock Purdy. 35-inch vertical and 10.2 broad, shows some explosion in the lower body. This guy was a really good player. I mean, that's the one thing. I mean, this guy was a perimeter wide receiver. He's got good size, kind of average speed. But, Hudson is an interesting player. He can beat press coverage. He gets up on the cornerback pretty quickly. He's got a nice job of locating the ball down the field. He can pull away and do some stuff after the catch. He's not the greatest route runner. We've seen some drops. If you throw it outside of his frame, he's got a poor catch rate. I don't know what happened at Auburn, why it ended at Auburn. Some people say he was kicked off the team at Auburn. Other people say no, he wasn't, that he was, he wasn't kicked off the team. But Kobe Hudson's an interesting player for sure. Has some athleticism, kind of thought to be more of a backup wide receiver. So that's Kobe Hudson. And then, the other names on the list, I think are kind of interesting as well. You've got Javon Baker, Cole Burgess. Burgess has got some return ability. He runs sub 4.5. He's probably got the best speed of these three wide receivers. He's an interesting player, more of a developmental player that needs to add strength, but he has pretty good size. And then Javon Baker, is interesting. He was drafted by the Patriots. He's from Atlanta, 6'1", 202 pounds, played collegiately, also at Central Florida. Mid 4.5 guy, 4.54 40, 37-inch vertical, though, so he's got good lower body explosion. And he was a former Alabama signee. and then he transferred to Central Florida. And he really does look the part. If you watch this guy, he looks like an NFL receiver. He's natural. He moves naturally. He's instinctive. He's got all kinds of change of speeds, and he understands how to create space and separation and route leverage. And really, really good NFL player. NFL size, above average play strength for sure. He can separate. He'll work back to the quarterback. He's a decent route runner. I mean, Javon Baker had a really nice career at Central Florida. And, as far as he needs to be a little bit more physical, there's some focus drops. There's he's not a perfect player by any stretch, but, he's got his play speed is better than his time speed. So even though he runs in the mid 4.5s, I think he kind of plays faster than that. And that's one of the things that kind of stood out to me when I watched him at Central Florida and in the draft process, is that he's a little bit more than you think as an athlete. He's a little bit more than you think as a mover. Patriots took him with the 110th pick overall in the 2024 draft. And, if you watched his college film at Central Florida, you'd be like, man, this guy's going to be good in the NFL. This guy's going to be good in the NFL. And they, Patriots brought in a few different receivers, and, they didn't really show a lot of patience with him, and they just kind of cycled through. Jalen Polk and Javon Baker, and, they've Pop Douglas. I mean, they've had a number of different guys there, but this guy he'll high point the football, which I really like. That's one of the things I really like about Baker. He'll high point the football. And he's always, it seems like this is a guy who's got some vertical to him. He's got some vertical ability to make plays down the field. He's got good hand-eye coordination. And as I said, very productive player at Central Florida. So he would be interesting. To me, he is probably the second most interesting guy on this list, is Javon Baker. Then let's move down to the last guy on the list. And that's the guy on the top of the list, Taylor Elgersma. Now, let's talk a little bit about Elgersma. Elgersma is an interesting player. He played at Laurier in Waterloo, Canada. Played 33 games across 4 years for Laurier, which, if you don't know Canadian amateur ball, they play 12-man ball there. That's right. Not 11, 12. And this guy is an interesting prospect. 6'4", maybe even closer to 6'5", 220 pounds. So he's got the stature. 4.53 speed. So he's got great speed. 1.60 in the 10-yard split. So he's got that as well. As far as quickness. And he's got a great deep ball as far as he's very accurate. He's very accurate on the move. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Ben Roethlisberger coming out of Miami of Ohio, in that he doesn't lose any accuracy on the run. He's got good arm talent, and he can, good accuracy. He'll throw the dig with real good precision, throws with good anticipation. He's run some RPOs, so he's he's definitely natural on the RPO game. But the big question with Elgersma is the low level of competition. It's just, there was going to be a transition when you're going from Laurier to the NFL. I mean, it's simple as that. He was on the Packers practice squad. He played in the preseason. He played pretty well. But if you look at his college film, I mean, it's almost like you can't really gain anything from it, because it's a way lower level. It's a low-level competition that he played against. The defenses he played against were not very aware in coverage, really couldn't stand up. This guy's not, his movement within the pocket needs to improve. That's for sure. He's got good speed when he moves, but his pocket movement ability and his pocket awareness is not quite there. He needs tutelage. He needs coaching. This is a developmental player. He struggles to identify blitzes. He'll sometimes put the ball in dangerous spots. He's had some fumbles against pressure. So he's not a runner per se. And, he's got speed, but he's not a scrambler. But he's an interesting player. And he's definitely a big time prospect. If you looked at him, he completed 77, look at his stats, he completed over 77% of his passes on the level that he was at. He won the Heck Crichton Award, which is given to the most outstanding player, Canadian football player in amateur sports. He was invited to the Senior Bowl and played in the Senior Bowl. And, he's an interesting guy. He was his league's MVP. He was second team All-Canadian. He's been good for a couple of years. He's had multiple years where he's completed over 73% of his passes. He went to Oak Ridge Secondary School in London, Ontario, where he also played hockey as a kid. Of course he did. He's in Canada. Michael Faulds is head coach. The guy was so focused on football that his head coach in high school would have to call him and tell him to take some breaks and relax a little bit. So he's somewhat of a legend. Taylor Elgersma is an amateur legend in Canada. He won the Heisman Trophy equivalent in 2024. But there's a difference in play style between Canadian football and U.S. football. I mean, 12 men, wider field, versus the pro NFL game, which is 11 men and a more narrow field. But this guy's arm talent is very impressive, and that's why he got invited to the Senior Bowl. He's got good accuracy. I think his deep ball accuracy might be the best part of his game. He'll push the ball down the field, and he's very accurate down the field. So, he does a good job of kind of layering the ball over linebackers. I think this is a developmental prospect of note. So he's got good accuracy in a clean pocket. When there's pressure in the pocket, then that everything kind of breaks down. His awareness needs a lot of work. He sometimes you'll see him move around in the pocket right into defenders, causing sacks. So he has a lot of trouble identifying when the blitz is coming and exactly where it's coming from. So he needs tutelage. And he's had fumbling issues when he gets hit from the blind side. His rushing ability is just purely average. He's not really a runner, even though he's got great testing straight line speed. He's much more of a pocket passer, but he's a pocket passer who, who's got a lot of talent, who can throw the accuracy. I mean, the accuracy is the best part of his game. His deep ball accuracy is probably the best part of his game. So, he doesn't get a lot of yards after the catch because that requires, your timing to be perfect. And his timing oftentimes is not perfect. But he's an interesting prospect for sure. He's got great pedigree coming out of Canada. How is it going to translate to the NFL? We don't know. He was always going to be kind of a long range day 3 draft and follow developmental type player. Some people, one guy compared him to Connor Cook, which is not a good comparison, but I think he's an interesting developmental prospect with some ability to improve, especially in Kyle's system around some better talent. So that's an interesting guy. If the Niners decide they want to move on from Mac Jones and trade Jones in the offseason, and they want to go next year with Brock as the starter and maybe, Adrian Martinez, Curtis Rourke, and a guy like Taylor Elgersma, as the competing for the backup spots, I think that would be a good option. I think that would be an attractive option, and I think it would make a lot of sense. So I like this name because it's an exciting guy with a lot of upside. Green Bay has always been known to be a really good personnel department. Brian Gutekunst knows talent. They had him in on their practice squad in camp last summer. I would take a look. This is a guy I would definitely take a look on. So anyway, interesting name. Thanks to Coach Yak for putting that out. We'll definitely keep up with it. We'll find out in the next few days if the Niners sign any of these guys. To me, if it was me, I would have the most interest in Elgersma, probably the second most in McLachlan, the tight end, and maybe the third most in Javon Baker. Not as interested in Cole Burgess or Kobe Hudson, but Elgersma, Baker, and McLachlan, I think, could absolutely help the Niners in 2026 and beyond. All right. Thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being the title sponsor of the Krug Show. Thanks to Coach Yak for putting that out there. And of course, we should tell you this 49er football season is presented by Sleeper, the fastest growing fantasy platform in the world. It's a one-stop shop. You get blazing fast news, real-time stats, group chat, season-long leagues, and of course, Sleeper picks for daily fantasy. Use promo code Larry, and Sleeper will match your first deposit up to $100. Links in the description. Terms and conditions do apply. And thanks to all of you for supporting the Krug Show on YouTube.